Oh dear, our brilliant top mind commander-in-chief said it again, which means we get a bonus video this week. For those brave right-wing Americans, if you want to fight against the country, you will need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. Ah yes, of course, you would need F-15s to resist a tyrannical government. Therefore, you might as well just give up and give said tyrannical government your guns. Just lay it all down. It's unfortunately a common argument against Second Amendment rights, which is annoying because when you understand how to refute it, you realize just how incredibly dumb it is. So in this video, I'll be briefly explaining why this "you would need F-15s" argument is so colossally dumb while playing some ESP RA, or just ESP RA, doesn't matter. I'll start this off with a question. What are things like nukes, warships, drones, F-15s, what are they actually for? Why, they are weapons that are very good for causing wide area destruction. In other words, they are weapons of war. Want the enemy barracks destroyed? F-15. Port city leveled? Warships and missiles. Secret enemy base? Drone strike. Worst case last scenario? Nuke 'em. All of these things are very good at taking out infrastructure like bridges and whatnot. But what are weapons of war not so good at? Why enforcing the laws on your own people? They kinda suck at that. But wait, how can that be? Tanks and F-15s and battleships and the whole 9 yards of every big, scary military-grade arsenal you can think of. How can they be ineffective at actually enforcing rules upon your nation? Well, to keep things simple, I'm going to use a very basic hypothetical law. Let's say the government bans the drinking of water. Oh no, you're still allowed to own water. They're just banning the drinking of water. And the infrastructure for pipes and faucets and whatnots are all still there. You can still take a shower and everything. Water itself isn't banned. You're just not allowed to drink it anymore. Now, obviously this law is very dumb, and this would never actually happen, blah blah blah. I'm just using it as a stand-in for any law that obviously no one would want to follow. Unless, of course, dying of dehydration in a few days is your thing. Anyways, how exactly is the state going to enforce such a silly law? What can they do to stop people from drinking water? Are they going to watch all citizens from cameras and then order a nuclear strike on anyone caught drinking water? Are they going to fly an F-15 or drive a tank into someone's house to investigate and search for contraband, make sure they're not drinking water there? Are they going to order a missile strike on an apartment complex if they suspect that maybe, just maybe, someone is having a sip of that good old H2O? No, of course not. Weapons of war are for, again, mass area destruction. They are very, very good for decimating infrastructure to subdue an enemy nation. But when it comes to the state using them against their own population, things run into a very big problem. Nuking your own citizens, as it turns out, is a really stupid idea. It means destroying the cities they live in, which means destroying your cities, which means destroying your own infrastructure, which means destroying your own economy. So any ruler who would think that such a tactic is a great idea, congratulations, you are now the ruler of absolutely nothing, because you wrecked the very thing that you depend on for your wealth and power. Absolutely genius. Seriously though, rulers of a nation rely entirely on that nation's economy to actually have any kind of leverage or power on the international stage. If a ruler is sending drones and F-15s to decimate every building in their own country if they suspect a citizen has some kind of contraband or is violating some kind of arbitrary draconian rules, they're doing far greater damage to themselves than anything else. So then, what options does the state have left for enforcing such a ridiculous law? Well, pretty much just the police state. You need men. Actual armed enforcers can knock on doors and conduct manual searches. They can set up checkpoints around the city and make sure rules are being followed. Armed men can go into a building and take out rebels without destroying the rest of the building. Very important there, without destroying the rest of the building, without destroying your own infrastructure. But enforcement officers of a tyrannical government face one little problem. If the people are armed, they face the prospect of being fired back on. Because here's the thing that dolts like Biden completely miss, or he's just hoping that you completely miss. People defending themselves against enforcement of an unethical and tyrannical law don't actually need to overthrow the state in order to successfully defend themselves. They just need to defend themselves from the Storm Brigade. And in any state that wishes to remain economically sustainable, there will always be more citizens working the fields and other jobs that actually provide wealth and produce things than there are enforcement officers. And even more dangerous, the corrupt politicians themselves risk being assassinated by an armed civilian, because as it turns out, owning a fleet of F-15s and tanks and everything else you can think of doesn't change the fact that your life still depends on your frail human body. This is why any wannabe 1984-style government must first heavily restrict gun ownership to the population that they wish to subdue. If you want historical evidence of this, just look at the Armenian Genocide, where the Armenians were disarmed before the Ottomans made their move. Kind of makes you wonder why certain people tend to question that one. Or for a military example, look into why guerrilla warfare is so effective. The US military had used their weapons of war to completely subdue the Afghanistan state, installing a puppet state in its stead in an attempt to bring more democracy to the region. And yet, they just couldn't do it. They couldn't subdue the actual people. They could not win the hearts of the Afghanis. They couldn't get rid of the Taliban, despite them having mostly nothing but automatic rifles, remote explosives, and Stinger missiles. That's all the Taliban had. Because as it turns out, unless you are willing to use weapons of war to decimate an entire city that any rebels may be hiding in, the only truly effective countermeasure against them is armed men going in, on the ground, to investigate the situation and enforce in person. And that is why the Second Amendment is so important. It's not just a right to defend yourself, it's a constitutional failsafe against any would-be tyrant attempting to impose draconian laws that are overwhelmingly unpopular and authoritarian and restrictive towards innocent civilians. And so any politician who tries to convince you that you must be disarmed for your own good and your own safety is either lying to you or is simply a senile old fool. Anyway, that's all for now. This was just a quick refutation of Biden's recent dumb statements. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, or share the video with friends to help them know how to refute this incredibly stupid but unfortunately very common argument. Till next time.